Hello, my name is Dan Hennon. Today is October 10th, 2018, and I'm going to be providing an update for the Crowley case updates. Tonight's episode, the case of the missing will. Catherine Kate Crowley, born 1964, died in 2015. Kate Crowley was David Crowley's mother, was Camille Crowley's mother-in-law, and Rannie Crowley's grandmother. So David and his sister Allison and his brother Dan Jr. Grew up with their mom Kate and their dad Dan Sr. They got divorced in the year 2000 and I believe it was 2005. Here's the Kate's obituary that was posted after she died. She was healthy, had 2 jobs, and was in good condition. They say that she simply died. There was no real explanation to it. And to the left here is a family photo taken in August 2014 at Rannie's birthday party there at the Crowley residence. And so that's 1 year later is when she was found dead in her home, unresponsive in her backyard. For those who don't recall, we have a lot of new members in the group. For those who don't recall, Kate Crowley lived in Owatonna, Minnesota. Her ex-husband Dan Sr. also lived in that same city, and that is about, I think, about a 35 to 40 minute drive away from Apple Valley, where the Crowley residence was, where the 3 bodies were found dead. And so that was January of 2015. Now, this is only less than 7 months later. The police report here in the local paper for Owatonna stated on August 9th, a death investigation for police. At midnight, officers responded to a death investigation report on Lancer Lane Northeast. So this is right at midnight. Officers responded. On the 9th, she was found unresponsive and already dead, slumped over a chair, sitting in a chair next to a table on this back patio. And so she died on August 8th that evening. A welfare check was done, I believe, by her boyfriend, who hadn't received any phone calls earlier that night, hadn't heard from her. He did a welfare check, showed up, and then saw the body, called police. So this was after the midnight hour of August 9th and the early morning hours of August 9th, 2015. So we've got David, Comel, Rannie, all dead, bodies found January of 2015. The police reports come out, and the significance of this case is that the police reports came out and everyone bought into and went along with the official story that David killed his wife, his 6-year-old or 5-year-old daughter, and then himself after being despondent and in a case of depression and whatnot, and then he did all this. Now, the police reports, the only mention of the 94-page police reports of anyone doubting the story was David's mother, Kate. She's the only one who said, "I didn't believe this could happen this way unless they were either both in on it or they had some kind of an agreement or something, but this is not something David would do." That's why there's been so much scrutiny on the strange, suspicious death of Kate Crowley. And so we'll be getting into that more here. So there's the back patio of her home, where the body was found in Owatonna, Minnesota. In looking into the estate and what would happen to the estate, there was questions and concerns as far as the benefit, the motive. If this was not just an accidental death, who would have been behind it? And so in looking for this, we see the court documents for the estate of Catherine Crowley, deceased. We see the petitioner as Daniel J. Crowley. That is the David's brother, DJ. This is Daniel J. And so he was the one who filed the paperwork to get the ball rolling on the estate. He used an attorney named Gregory C. Olson that he retained for this. And what we see on August 19th of 2015, the highlighted in the yellow, is a statement of content, either lost, destroyed, or unavailable will, document ID number 4. And that kind of perked up our interest there as far as the will. Being only 51 years old, folks were wondering if she had a will. If she did, if she didn't, did she have money? Was there any sort of reason to have her, anyone to have her dead? And so when we saw this, this was fairly interesting as far as the will destroyed or unavailable or lost. And what we get here now, just this week, an individual, a citizen investigator, found this information and provided it to me here, the following. The first thing is here, this document to the above named court, the undersigned Allison Crowley respectfully states, she's the daughter, a surviving daughter. So Kate has died, and she was divorced, not remarried. And so the only remaining members left of the family is her son DJ and her daughter Allison. Allison here in this paperwork, she's living in Chicago at the time. She's basically, if you look at number 4 there, she renounces any right to the appointment as to the personal representative and hereby nominates her brother Daniel J. as the personal representative of the above named estate. So really she's signing away her rights here on August 14th to say that, you know what, I want my brother to be in charge. I want my brother to take over this. And that was on the 14th. So this explains, if we go back here a page, why Daniel Crowley is the one doing the petitioning. That question was raised. Why was he first to inquire about her estate? But it really wasn't. It was Allison did the paperwork, signing it over to Daniel J. So Dan Jr. now, on the 19th, goes and begins his course of business, prepping the estate here for his late mother. So she signed it away. We've got this. The next form here is paperwork also filed on August 19th in the 3rd District Court. So if you look at the top right and in the middle right, all uppercase, it says Statement of Contents of Lost or Otherwise Unavailable Will for a deceased person. And so it says here, the undersigned states to the above named court that the original last will and testament of the above named decedent is unavailable because it is lost, and that the will contained the following. The residue of the estate as follows: to my spouse, number 1, if my spouse survives me. Now, Kate's not married. She's divorced in 2005. Number 2 is, if my spouse does not survive me, then I devise and said residue to be divided into equal shares and distributed to my children. And so they couldn't find the will. They looked for it and couldn't find the will, but whoever it was that went basically says, we don't have it, but here's what it stated. And so take that how you wish, but whatever she had the final funds going into, it says now it's going to be divided to the equal shares. So really, Allison and Dan Jr. would get all the remaining assets. She did not have lots of money. She was not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. She did have debts and bills to pay, but there still was excess carryover that was left, and that was then divvied up between Allison and Dan Jr. And if you read here on this next page, it's very interesting. There's 4 things. I want to cover the first 3 items. Number 1, Daniel T. Crowley. This is the former spouse of the decedent. It says here on number 1 that he went through the decedent's legal documents and records after her death and was unable to locate the original of the will after conducting a thorough and exhaustive search. So it looks like he was able to go into her records and her personal belongings to look for it, and says that he was unable to locate it, a hard copy of the will. Number 2, they contacted the attorney's office responsible for the drafting of the will. The will was prepared at the office of Gregory C. Olson of Patton, Hoverston, and Berg, PA, who verified that the original will was not contained in the client's file, which was on record there. So this, let's reiterate here, item number 2, they couldn't find the original will, which means that at one point Kate Crowley had a will. She went so far as to have an attorney, Gregory Olson here, who was also representing Dan Jr. in the estate. She at one point must have gone to him to have a will prepared. And so now the ex-husband couldn't find it, the lawyer couldn't find it, and then number 3, inquiries were made within the family as to whether or not anyone had knowledge of a new will being executed, since the old will dated March 13, 2006. And it says here, a thorough and exhaustive search was made for the will shortly after the death, and there was no information as to any such will being found. So let's go back. They were divorced in 2005. Kate Crowley had a will done with the help of Gregory C. Olson on March 13th of 2006. So right away, a young divorced mother of 3 goes and gets a will done at an attorney's office at Patton, Halberstam, and Berg. Now the will goes missing in between time, so they don't know if there was an updated will, a new version, anything of the sort, but a thorough and exhaustive search of the home, item number 1, couldn't be found. Item number 2, at the law office, they couldn't be found. And number 3, the remaining people of the family, the remaining family members, could not or did not know or was even aware of a will. So this gets to the title of the broadcast, The Mystery, the Case of the Missing Will. We had been under the assumption here, looking into the investigation of the Crowley case and subsequently the Kate Crowley case, that we didn't think there was a will. We just thought that she died, she was young, and nothing came of it. It did perk up our ears as there was a strange, the secretness of the death, as far as family members even found out of Kate's passing on our Facebook page for the Crowley case, because it was very secretive the way that was handled and that information was disseminated. And so now we find out that there was indeed a will, in fact, way back in 2006. Now the strange thing for me here is that not only could they find the will, the hard copy will, but they went to the attorney's office and could not find the will. So hopefully on this video here, in the comments section below, those of you who are attorneys and whatnot, feel free to make a comment. Is that common? Or aren't they required to keep the copy of the will of their clients on site? So let's try to clarify that. So anyway, Gregory Olson could not find it. The last page of this information here that was forwarded to me by a citizen investigator was this state of Minnesota, Steele County, which is Owatonna, is Daniel J. Crowley declaring, states under oath that the representation in the foregoing statement is true as far as he knows, and that such a statement is true and complete to the best of his knowledge. He's signed off. In fact, it's notary, a notary signature, then a stamp besides, and at the very bottom you see it's Gregory Olson, Patton, Halberstam, and Berg. So he signs off. It's good to go. This is August 19th of 2015. She dies the 8th. They find the body on the 9th. And here we go, 19 days later. Everything's kind of gone through, and in 10 days they can't come up with anything. And so they give the remaining assets to equally between Allison and Dan Jr. So I began to look into the background of this Gregory Olson. His name has come up a couple of times here. He does work here, it looks like, for Patton, Halberstam, and Berg, PA. This is the website. It does show the profiles of their lawyers and their attorneys on staff. And they've got several locations. And here is Mr. Gregory Olson. So he's handling, he was, I guess, a family lawyer on the Kate Crowley side, and then did the will. And then when Dan Jr. went to go get the claim with Allison as well, they also worked with Gregory Olson. So they went to the offices of Patton, Hoverson, and Berg. Now if I go to LinkedIn and pull up Patterson, Hoverson, and Berg, I see that there's 17 employees on LinkedIn. So small, rather small office, some paralegals, some attorneys, and I don't see Mr. Greg Olson's name there mentioned. And so there is a page 2. Here's the second list of employees there at the firm on LinkedIn. I don't see a Gregory Olson there at all. Now if I go and do an actual search on LinkedIn for Gregory Olson, his name does come up as just Greg Olson. It looks like he's not linked to his actual employer for Patton and for the full name, but he's got listed here just PH&B Law Offices. I find it strange he only has 3 connections. Not connected to the firm, only 3 connections. Usually attorneys have very well connected with what it is they're doing. So go back to the page, and certainly enough, even though he's not listed there on LinkedIn, he certainly is a member. There's his picture again with the rest of the team. So Gregory C. Olson does in fact work there. Just may not be too involved in LinkedIn to keep his information up to speed, but that is something different. All right, his background and his profile shows his various bar admissions and his certifications. He's been around for a while here, first getting admitted to the bar in 1978, so he's been around for a while and has been an attorney lawyer for many years. That also could explain the lack of information on the LinkedIn site, as many younger folks keep that page up to date. Older folks do not have that much interest in that, so that could explain that. His education was University of Minnesota, Bachelor of Arts in 73, then got a master's degree in 81, and then got his law degree from Hamlin in 1977. So he's been around for a while. Now, what I was interested in here for, thinking of how someone could lose the will here, I wanted to see what his background was. Where did Mr. Greg Olson work in the past? It shows currently that he's an attorney at Patton, and we see that, and that is correct. That makes sense. He's been there since 2007. And then attorney, law offices of Gregory C. Olson from 78 to 2007. So for many years, looks like he ran his own law firm, his single practice there by himself, right after getting his degree. So it doesn't appear that he worked anywhere. Got his degree and started his own law practice, and then listed as an adjunct professor at the University of St. Thomas since 1984 to present. That's pretty good university here in the Twin Cities area. So I began to do some research looking up here with the Secretary of State, Office of Minnesota Secretary of State. I couldn't find any business record searches for law offices of Gregory Olson. I did a search for active statuses, inactive statuses, and it contains the name Gregory C. Olson or the phrase law offices of Gregory C. Olson. And as you see there at the bottom, no results match. So he may have just been running his own business and never filed or never set it up or never registered his business. So I thought, well, let's go to the St. Thomas website. And St. Thomas here, University of St. Thomas, here's the actual website of their adjunct faculty. So you can go right there to the website, and anyone can scroll down the list of adjunct professors that they've got and can see How many people are currently on staff? It's listed in alphabetical order. Let me click this here, try to scroll down. There we go. A lot of adjunct professors listed alphabetical at the University of St. Thomas. Many, many. Listed from A all the way through last name Will. I don't see a Gregory Olson listed at all. He's been there since 1984, adjunct professor, so that's about 34 years at the university. And so here it is, alphabetical. Let's go to the letter O. I see a Brett Olander. I don't see a Greg Olson at all. Gregory Olson. So maybe they just forgot to list his name on their website. Pretty prestigious school there. Looks like they've got all these up to date. Can't imagine they would have forgot about Mr. Greg Olson, but perhaps they did. But he's been there for 34 years. Now the other thing is that profile may not be updated with his current employer, so maybe he no longer is an adjunct professor. And I had thought about that as well. I did a Google search relating to St. Thomas University, the phrase adjunct professor and the name Gregory C. Olson on Google, and in fact nothing came up. Nothing came up at all as if he ever worked there or was ever an adjunct professor at all. So I'm beginning to question Mr. Olson's background. And so I've got a premium account here at the White Pages. Looked him up, looked up his background. A couple things came up that were strange, not out of the ordinary, but I just consider them strange. I've got a speeding ticket here, 65 and a 55 by Mr. Gregory Olson. That was just this January, it looks like. And then we go to the next page. We've got a charge 1 of a DWI back in 97. Charge 2 of a second DWI. This was less than a year later, his second one. And if you look at the highlighted mention there, September 1st of 98, pulled over by the Minnesota State Patrol in Rochester with a .20 gross misdemeanor. And I'm assuming on that first case, he would have been under a 1 or 2 year probation after the first DWI. So this would have been a violation of his with the second DWI, and that's why they listed it up here as a gross misdemeanor. The first one looks like, if you look under the disposition, it says dismissed. DWI dismissed back in 97. Then one within the year that's convicted, they jack it up to a gross misdemeanor. And that 2 that's 2 within a 5-year period. And then charge number 3 is a failure to display ATV registration tags. That looks to be probably a 4-wheeler or some kind of all-terrain vehicle. So some trouble with the law, not big, and that took place in the year 2000. And last of all, we see here on that same background report a bankruptcy charge for Mr. Gregory Olson. So it looks like in 2012, Greg Olson filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy charges. And so, strange goings-ons here with this case. And once again, whether it's the Crowley case from Apple Valley, the triple murder case that we've been looking into, or the Kate Crowley strange, suspicious, mysterious death. Now we find out that she did in fact have a will, and that will was done at an attorney's office, saved and signed, and now it's surprisingly went missing. And so it's just one more strange, odd, coincidental thing relating to this case. Once again, please leave your comments below here with any suggestions you have, or if you were an attorney or with an attorney background, clarify some of this stuff for the rest of us here. Thanks for listening.